Brandon, I'm going to connect you right now, just a moment. Hi, Brandon, can you hear me?
Hello, I'm not sure if you can hear me. Your audio is muted, the town meeting TV audio on my end, so I can't hear you.
Oh, there we go. Sorry about that, Brandon. You're connected with the select board.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, so I own a gym over on South Brownell Road. Participants that could stay 6 feet apart from one another, then they were allowed to take their masks off, and they worked that into the definition of a public space. I was just wondering if there was any way that could be considered for the Williston mask mandate.
Certainly, we can consider that. We would need to warn the issue so that we would, at the earliest we could do that would be next week.
Next week?
Yep.
Gotcha. And would that just be added to the agenda of the next meeting?
Yes.
Awesome. All right. Is there anything else that I can do to promote that as it's coming into the next week's meeting?
Well, you've given us your requests, and we can consider it and look for public opinion on it as well.
Okay. Great. Thank you very much.
Good, thank you. Anyone else on the Zoom list?
Nope, no one else, Terry.
Then we'll move on then to the rest of the agenda, which is reviewing the capital and operating budgets of various departments. And I've asked Eric to do a quick introduction of how we've proceeded this way on this in the past, and hopefully will tonight. This is the maiden voyage for Greta on a budget discussion. So we have a quorum, and we have one member who is going to be late tonight. So Eric.
Thanks, Terry. Yeah, for everyone listening and watching at home, this is the start of the budget review for the board. The board's received a draft budget from the manager earlier this month. So we'll have each department head presenting their budgets. I've asked each department to provide a brief update on their department to the board this week and next week, and then speak to some more of the notable variances in the draft budget. Certainly it's open for the board to ask any questions of department heads for any line item as they're here and going through their initial review. You'll see this evening I passed out the first possible budget changes sheet that staff tends to update as we go here. We put the draft budget together. Especially for some outside agencies, we use our best informed number we have, and then we get some firm numbers as we go in December. So you'll see just a couple more minor updates that we received in the last week on your possible changes sheet. And as the board goes through the review, certainly additional items can be added to this with the board's consensus as we go along here to finally arrive at a bottom line for town meeting.
Good, thank you. So we'll proceed then with the first person, Sarah Mason, our town clerk, talking about the clerk and elections department. So Sarah, join us at the table. You can demask so we can hear you better.
Scott, is either seat better or worse? Either seat better? Hi, everybody. I'm Sarah Mason, the town clerk, for anyone zooming in at home that might be on their phone. Thanks for having me and being the first one in the top spot. I'll try to keep this short and sweet to keep you on your schedule as much as possible. The good news for this year is that the clerk's budget tends to be fairly consistent. This year is basically the same. In your budget packet, you'll notice that there were no major increases to report. I don't have any major spending projects that are on the horizon. Most categories that are up at all would be in the election portion of my two categories. I have my clerk office, budget, and then I have separate lines for elections. FY23 is going to be an on-election year, as I like to call it, with 3 elections. The first will be the August primary in 22, and then the general in November, and then town meeting of 23, all fall within one fiscal year. So that goes from really none this year to 3 for next year. So some of the things that I'd bumped up is going to be the poll worker compensation went up a little bit, the primary and the general. Could be busier than usual, what I'm calling the Leahy effect. I think we're going to see more interest certainly in November, which if people understand the primary is almost as important. If you want your people in November, you need to choose them in August. So I bumped those up a little bit because, as some of you know, it takes a little legwork beforehand for the August and for November, and probably even for March. So that moves up a little bit more, probably supplying for ballots, envelopes, some of the basic necessities for putting on the election. Besides that, most things that are up can be explained with just overall, like our buildings, this building number was up a little bit. Shirley could speak to those if there were any major questions, but those for the most part were just sort of overall building maintenance issues. And I think besides that, it was fairly straightforward. And if you've had time to look at it, I'll take a few questions.
And I don't think you have any capital expenses.
I don't have anything. No, there's no major plans for anything. We're pretty low key downstairs. Nothing has come up yet that I need that I don't have, which is good.
Questions, Sarah? Pretty straightforward.
Great.
So,
Now,
thank
that's
you.
what I like. Thank you very
very
much.
much.
Thank you.
Okay, yes.
Is Jack Price on the, oh, he's just entering the building. We're running early, so welcome, Jack. So we welcome the chair of the Cemetery Commission, Jack Price, to present the budget for the cemetery department.
Thank you.
Jack, welcome.
Thank you, Terry. Do we have any actual numbers to present, or well, I got them all?
We have in our booklets, I believe.
You have.
You have.
Dave, okay, you have copies of everything. Well, let's start out with the expenditures, which are summarized in on one page. I think you'll have that smaller itemization, and I'll just run down that, and then we can go item by item if you want to. Professional services, which is basically mowing and trimming, which is the largest part of our budget in our 5 cemeteries. We've asked for $26,000. If you look down on the 4th line there, under approved for last year, for 2022, excuse me, that's $29,000, and this time it's $26,000, but that is because we break that out for $5,000 of maintenance and repairs, which it was all lumped together in 2022, and that's why it looks like a decrease, but it's actually a slight increase from 26 plus 5 would be 31, and I'll explain that in a few minutes. Property and casualty insurance, telephone and postage, that's what it is. The cornerstone expenses, and this involves Deerview only, where we're still selling, or that's where we sell all of the available burial lots. East Cemetery is completely sold out, so the only full casket burials we're doing right now are in Deerview, and those lots, the cornerstones expenses are up from $3,100 to $3,500 requested, and that's basically because of the cost of the stones themselves. The monument dealers set the price on that, and it's a competitive thing, but we anticipate an increase in that. and I'll talk about that in a second. Equipment repairs and maintenance goes from 2,000 last year as a line item to 0 this year because this coming year, because we don't use any of our own equipment anymore. The lawn tractors used to mow the cemeteries are gone, or they're somewhere else. They're not part of the cemetery equipment. So Memorial Garden costs are basically for interments, for burial of ashes, and at $350 per interment. That's how you get $1050 for the proposed. The reason it was $1550 last year, well, it wasn't even listed last year, but this for the Memorial Garden stone, which is the final line item, is $1550, and that included lettering. So those two items, $1,050 and $600 for lettering, is the total cost expenditures for the Memorial Garden. That the Memorial Garden, I think you may know, is just a community cremains burial plot. All of the remains that are buried in the Memorial Garden are actually in biodegradable boxes, and there is a rough grid of where ashes are put and when we will consider that particular part of the garden to be filled up before we expand the Memorial Garden in the future. And that, we have that potential to do that. So if you look at the more expanded version of expenditures, again, the requested for the coming year is $26,000. And again, that includes the mowing, which basically breaks down to, Shirley and I figured it out, is about $4,300 per month for the mowing and trimming of the well, 4 cemeteries. If you don't, Memorial Garden doesn't really take much maintenance in that respect. But so for 6 months of that kind of maintenance, it comes down to $26,000. Property insurance and telephone and postage we could skip over, I think. Maintenance and repairs, that includes maintaining and repairing old stones. Some of these cemeteries are very old. When they break, they fall down, break, they have to be repaired in a timely manner and put back together. And the fence around cemeteries needs maintenance and tree removal. We just spent $2,500 a couple months ago, or $2,400 to take out 2 large trees in each cemetery. So $5,000 is a proposal, and that would pretty well cover what we need, we feel, barring any real unforeseen disasters. The next line item, cornerstones, this involves Deerview only, and the cornerstones, which are 6 by 6 by 6 blocks of granite, we used to be able to get them locally, but there's a lot going on in Barry right now as far as granite sheds closing or being bought up by foreign enterprises. And so we've actually gone to local monument dealers and tried to get the same thing for a more reasonable price. The going rate has been $160. Recently we got wind that that's going to go up quite a bit, so we raised it to $200. last week we found out that the same monument dealer we're dealing with in Essex Junction projects that it'll be 235. So I think we're going to have to bid that out for, competitive bids in the spring, because our other monument dealers will try to get the best deal. But right now, it's $200 for a set of, we're asking for $200 for a set of 4.
So, I'm sorry, those are the 6-inch by 6-inch
Yes.
things? Okay, yeah.
Yeah. When you buy a lot, you have to define where that lot is to avoid confusion, and also just to basically grid it out. And so that's required. In addition to the cost of the lot, the new owner has to purchase a set of 4 cornerstones.
Yes. Okay.
Next line item is equipment repairs. That's gone. Memorial Garden maintenance. That breaks down into 2 parts here, and the memorial, the interment cost again is $350, and we on average do 3 burials in the Memorial Garden each year, so that comes up to $1,050. The lettering on the community stones, I don't know if you're familiar with this, but the Memorial Garden has very large stones that the dates of birth and death are, and of course the interred names are listed on these large stones, and that lettering has gone up also. So in fact, it outpaced what we were actually charging for a burial over there. So we've raised the cost from for lettering. I think we allotted $175 last year for lettering, and it's by the letter, but it averages a certain amount per name and date. And so we've raised that to $200 to cover ourselves. So we're doing a little bit better than breaking even, but it's a real fluid situation, and there aren't too many people who do that kind of work. So, but I think for the next year, that's what we're going to look at. And finally, as far as revenue is concerned, this is a little bit confusing if you don't know how the cornerstones work here. Are you on that last page with the 3 revenue items described as cornerstone fees, cemetery lots, and memorial garden fees? Do you have that in front of you? Okay.
That's in the revenue section of your.
That's right. That's in the revenue section. And it's the shortest page, and it's in a landscape format.
And we realized we forgot page numbers in the book. So
Oh, yeah.
So if
Sorry.
you go, it's the 4th page from the back of the revenue section of the book. Cemetery revenue.
So that first account number there describes money coming in, but that's kind of ambiguous because it's a wash, because when a lot is sold to a purchaser, they are required to purchase a set of 4 cornerstones. Let's say for next year's reasoning, it's $200. Then they write a check to the town for $200 for the cornerstones. And when the cornerstones come in from the memorial dealer, the town then pays the memorial dealer the same amount out. So that's, it's a reimbursement situation. So it's just bookkeeping how that works. It's in and then out again. And there's probably a 3-month delay on that. Actual sale of cemetery lots comes down to, we sell about 10 lots in Deerview each year, and of those we project that about 8 of those will be Williston residents, and they purchase a lot at the amount of $500 per lot. A lot is a 4 by 10 foot area. Okay, it's a little confusing because in the old cemetery, in East Cemetery, is 4 by 8. It's a shorter thing, but 4 by 8. And a plot is defined as 2 or more lots. Okay, bigger word, plot, and lot is a subset of that. So that's the way you can remember it. At any rate, a lot is sold to residents at $500 a lot, and to non-residents at $1,000 a lot. So we figure we're going to projected to sell on an average a year 8 lots to residents and 2 to non-residents for a total in revenue from lot sales coming in at $6,000. And finally, the cost of lettering the cost of the lot and the lettering will come in. The total fee now we're raising that to $600 to cover the cost, the increased cost of lettering. So it was $500. Now we're raising it to $600. So that will for a projected number of interments in the Memorial Garden, that gives us a revenue of approximately $1,800 there. So, questions? Yeah.
Any questions for Jack?
The only question I have is, I don't know how you asked this about a cemetery, but there's not going to be a great increase or change in the number of burials that you anticipate.
Burials? No, I don't think so. In fact, we anticipated maybe with the COVID going on. Oh, I'm sorry. Sitting here without a mask. Pardon me.
While you're talking, you're fine.
No, we asked people to do
All right.
that so we could hear you better.
All right, thank you. Well, anyway, cuff me. Anyway,
Pick up a ticket on the way out.
yeah, we anticipated a possibility with COVID and actually cemetery or funeral homes stockpiling bodies, believe it or not. Actually, it's a harsh way to put it, but they actually, we thought that might be a problem. We might have 2 or 3 times the number of interments this year once things started to relax, and that didn't happen. What did happen was a church in Essex Junction bought 16 lots as an inducement to join their church. For people who join their church, they get a free lot thrown in. So that skewed last year's data. So yeah.
Wow. I wonder if we should raise money that way, like have a lottery raffle, perhaps.
Now you're going back to Salem.
A lot and plot raffle. Yeah.
Well, there's all sorts of things we think about, and none of them are legal.
Any further questions? Thank you, Jack. Appreciate all you do for the town.
Pleasure.
Moving on to Planning and Zoning Department budget. Matt Belanger, our Director of Planning, is here to give us the lowdown both on operating and capital.
And Terry, we realize with capital, Melinda will run through that, and we'll have her or Matt do that next week. She had a DRB commitment tonight. That's okay.
Great. Thanks for having me here. I've transmitted a proposed budget to the Select Board. It's quite similar to budgets that you've seen from the Planning and Zoning Department in the past. I have a few highlights, and then I'm happy to answer questions. As I mentioned in my transmittal memo, we are projecting revenue very similar, but about a $10,000 increase in permit fee revenue. We try to be conservative about permit fee revenue, but we've been very conservative, and occasionally we do adjust it upward if we see that we're straying, further away from it than usual. So that's the reasoning behind that. We are seeing a decrease in our miscellaneous planning studies line item that reflects closing out the form-based code project, for which we're paying a good bit more through the end of this fiscal year. We are retaining some money in there for the funding of various unified planning work program projects and grant matches as we prepare for the 2025 town plan, and also a few closeout activities that are likely to precipitate following the hopeful adoption of the form-based code. There's some other regulatory edits and planning activities that will come out of that. We have an increase in training and conferences to reflect the town's ability to offer the Master Naturalist program again this year. This is something we don't request to fund unless we know we can do it, and it will be something that towns can make available this year. It's been popular in past years through our department. And then we have an increase in the GIS and data management line. This is related to an opportunity we have. We'll be buying updated tax parcel shape files, the map files that our geographic information system uses. And there's an opportunity to have more of our grand list and other property data co-located into that shape file, which increases our analytical horsepower, and we hope provides the department with a bit of a toehold into further coordination of property-based information across the town and eventual coordination of permitting activities and things like that. It's a longstanding goal of the department and the town. Other than that, I think we've made a few minor adjustments just related to actual or predicted costs over the last few years, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have on the operating budget.
So it appears that the overall cost increase has been about $14,000. So it's pretty slim for a large department. Questions for Matt on the operating budget?
No.
I mean, my only question is related to, we got the energy, the job description for the potential new position within your department. So obviously that would add, assuming full-time, 72,000 to this number, so.
So we'll be talking about that once we get through talking about numbers.
Okay.
And certainly, while Matt's here this evening too, if you have any questions on that, we can speak to that too, if you want to.
Matt, the only question I have is, sorry, excuse me, about the planning studies. Sorry, excuse me, sir. And my question is it's a significant reduction, I assume, because the form-based code is coming to an end. But that form-based code, I assume the cost of that was pretty significant. So this can only be a piece of.
Correct.
The 30,000 that was showing in last year's budget cannot be the overall cost of that.
Yeah, the overall.
That was a huge effort.
The overall cost to the town on the form-based code project is about $50,000. It's about $120,000 project, but we benefit from a federal match through the transportation fund. So we're getting a lot of bang for our buck, I hope, out of that project. But we also, I think the 30 that we have in this fiscal year is a little bit generous. We're probably not even likely to spend all that. It just depends on how the two fiscal years of the project balance out. We wanted to keep enough headroom because we weren't exactly sure how the project would bill to us across the fiscal year last June and July.
Okay.
Yeah, the rest of the expenses in FY '21, if you look at that column.
Yes, okay. Okay, great, thank you. So what's next?
There's a couple of things. So first off, coming out of the form-based code, it's a different sort of land development code. It's really highly integrated with future transportation infrastructure that might be built sort of at the same time as new development in Taft Corners. So there are some things the code addresses about potential new street section designs to create more walkable, bikeable streets. Those things would not be just in the land use code, they would need to be appended into the public works specifications as well. So there's a piece of work to work through related to that. The other things that may come out of form-based code are on our regulating plan, which is that backbone document that lays out the pattern of development for Taft Corners. There are places for streets and public paths. There are also places for public green space and open space and parks. We plan on bringing you a form-based code that identifies those on the regulating plan, and at the same time bringing you an official map that puts the town in a better position to actually gain control and ownership over those pieces of land. But it's not going to make them free, and it's not going to make them free to design and manage and things like that. So I would anticipate some planning work around how to really operationalize that piece of the code, bringing the public realm into Taft Corners. And then we are, as I mentioned, in the early preparation stages for that 2025 town plan. The current plan expires on August 25th of 2025. Our target date is to bring a complete draft comprehensive plan to this board about a year ahead of that, so late August of 24. So rolling into, as we're thinking about FY23, this is the time to start making any requests we have of the Regional Planning Commission around demographic data, trends, any analytical work we're looking for, so that we can start that public process with the town plan by giving folks in Williston a really nice picture of where the town is at and where we think it's going and how it's, its place in the region is evolving and things like that. So mostly that's money that will be used to leverage the work of the Regional Planning Commission, consultant work. We also often tap it as a match for municipal planning grants. We've been fortunate enough to receive a municipal planning grant this fiscal year, which is related to illustrating some new design standards for the village. We hope to be able to continue to use town funds to generate more resources outside of the town's budget as well.
Okay. Do you, is this going to put a burden on existing staff? Asking the question probably more appropriately is, do you have sufficient staff to do that?
To administer the code and prepare for the town plan?
All the
above?
that you just talked about.
Yeah, we've really tried to make our day-to-day operations efficient in such a way that this longer range work can be given its proper attention. We are experiencing more and more complex DRB approvals and applications, and that is taking up a little more of our time to serve that need. We are going to see a shift in the development review picture as we come into form-based code, because it also anticipates a more prescriptive, more formulaic approval process for new buildings in the Taft Corners area. Probably not going to change the staff work that much. If in any case, it might be a little bit more. But really, the unmet need in our department isn't related to those things. It's meeting the demands for things like zoning enforcement and interdepartmental coordination around enforcement on the day-to-day basis. And that's a slow but steadily growing need that is a challenge to meet. And it's probably one of the things that's the most challenging in terms of how much time you are able to allocate to it and plan to allocate to it, because it's very demand responsive and it's very unpredictable in terms of volume. So as the community matures, I think we've talked internally a little bit about needs for code enforcement, both coming out of zoning, but also coming out of fire, parking, other sort of, town ordinance enforcement items that, it may be more of a shared position at some point that can take that stuff on and be a little more systematic about it than we're necessarily able to be right now.
Okay, good, thank you.
Any other questions on the operating budget?
I had one in the transmittal memo under increase in GIS data management. There's a sentence that the update will allow for more in-depth spatial analysis of service demands and land use trends. And I'm just wondering, like, what does that mean? In-depth spatial is like, have you ever said, oh, this is a spatial analysis, but it's not in-depth?
So there's quite a lot of information in the town that can be geographically located if you have it in the system. One of the ones that I've always talked about wanting to do, for example, is to map water consumption across every parcel that gets a water bill in town. We have a department upstairs that, has water bills that have addresses on them. We have a department downstairs that has maps with all the addresses on them. But we don't have that data in a place where it can talk to each other.
What would you use that for?
It would be interesting to look at both, is there any relationship between where development happens and what kind of consumption happens? It can give us clues about household size and types of development that may be generating different household sizes. Another good example is just looking at bedroom count or school bus routing or school population home address mapping, so that we can offer better predictions about when there's new development coming to town. Is it development that is likely or not likely to put more kids in the school system? We'd like to look at how an existing residential neighborhood evolves from when it's first constructed over time. So if you take like a Brennan Woods and look at, the bedroom count and then the total population over the years, so that you can predict those long-term trends. Williston's often, when we look at census data, it's a little bit too small sometimes to draw meaningful conclusions from a lot of the census data. In other words, you get the number and the number looks great and there's an interesting trend, and then you look at the margin of error and you go, well, it's broader than the entire scale of the change. We really shouldn't be using that number for anything. With more of our sort of ownership over our own data, we can provide a little bit better insight on some of those things, I think.
All right, great, thank you.
Other questions on operating? I think there's a few things on capital to take a look at that you had, Joe, from Melinda's and,
We're going to do that next
or
week.
next week for the capital. On
Yeah, we can do that next week.
I beg your pardon. I didn't understand.
It's okay.
Good, okay, then we can then go on to discuss the the position within the planning department that Eric has given us the memo on. So Eric, I presume you and Matt will be discussing this?
Yep, I can lead off, and get Matt here to help speak to kind of the interdepartmental working here. So the board's direction after the last week's meeting, Matt and I sat down and thought about this for how an energy-focused position would integrate into the planning program in the town in greater detail. And we had a couple good conversations on this, thinking about community needs as well, and certainly the energy need. And what we looked at is a position at the planner level, with a title we've drafted, Energy and Community Development, a planner in those regards. It'd be focused on implementation of the town's energy plan and other community planning objectives to foster vibrancy and tackling major goals within the town plan. Matt can speak this a little bit more, but we have a number of goals in our town plan. We have on our staff, one staff person really focused on the built space with leading development review. All staff members have a hand in that in some extent, and also a staff position looking on the conservation side. And it's freeing up specific bandwidth for these other elements like the energy plan, affordable housing elements, transit, and provides specific focus in those areas to kind of be that interconnectivity between our conservation and our built components in town. I think I covered that. Feel free to, if you want to jump in just on the how it fits into the overall planning program.
Sure. Well, I think as the select board's probably aware, quite a few of the town's energy plan goals are directly connected to land use regulation. So there's a nice connection there with some of what our department works on anyway in terms of developing zoning bylaw amendments or other town policies that would be more directly related to energy. We also, as planners, we're all sort of avid generalists, and we understand that everything's connected to everything else. And, would stand ready to support somebody in a role that had this focus on energy. And additionally, when Eric and I talked about how this position might look particularly as a full-time position within the department, we talked about the other needs that really need some more focus. Affordable housing, the whole time I've been in Williston and long before, has been a top line desire for the town to make progress on. And, there has been quite a bit of progress made in terms of policies the town's adopted, incentives it's created. But there's more work to be done there, and it's really strongly parallel to the way we think an energy planner would work, in that it's a little more outward facing beyond the town's boundaries than some of the other planning work we do. In other words, coordination with the region, seeking out opportunities to leverage outside of the town funds and efforts, and coordinating with the surrounding communities on that goal. So although you sort of look at it and say, well, energy, affordable housing, and of course, given the town's overall thrust of its town plan in terms of where and how it expects new residential projects to come online, there's a really nice land use, efficient transportation, energy savings, and affordability connection there that I think, with all of that in one person's head and on their work plan, could work really nicely. And, they have a lot of support within our department in terms of the existing planning program and everything that we already do and know in our department.
Questions, comments?
The first thing that struck me a little bit, Matt, was based on the salary and the qualifications. I don't know how to correctly put this, so if I put it incorrectly, I apologize. But it's a relatively not somebody with a tremendous amount of experience is envisioned as being appropriate for this position. Would that be correct?
I think somebody with more experience could do more with the position. I think this reflects the way we typically bring people into the department, and that someone at the planner level would be well suited to get a good start on it, and they would add capability as they went. So, there's quite a bit of groundwork to be done. That's just literally having somebody who has the focus in their day to work on these items. But really, as I think we've seen with a couple of positions in our department over the last few years, the ability to add capability and to expand, and for Williston, as I've always thought, to take a leadership role on these kind of cutting edge issues, the sky's kind of the limit in terms of where that can go. There's really a lot of ability for somebody to function at a whole bunch of levels, from walking off the street and I say, here's the town's goals around energy, affordable housing, built environment, sustainable transportation, go figure it out, to somebody who's been doing it for a while, saying, I know what we can focus on now, we can go do this. So
Does the planning office have, and I think this is asking you personally as the town planner, do you have the capacity to take on this new position?
yes.
Okay.
We have the physical space. We would need to do a little bit of equipment budgeting. As far as being, supervision and things like that, it's myself and 3 full-time and 1 part-timer in the summer. That there's plenty of capacity there and ability to support someone into this role.
Okay. And then I think my last question is, it discusses bringing somebody on part-time. And my question is it realistic to expect that a qualified person, at the salary that's being at least presented here, and I'm going to use the words lack of benefits that come with a part-time position, that a good candidate would be attracted to this position?
Well, you never know. There's sometimes there's someone out there where part-time really makes sense with what they want to do. I will say, in the sort of Chittenden County planning arena, municipalities that have looked for part-time help have generally taken longer to recruit, and some have ended up, in the case of zoning administrators, sharing a half-time person in order to turn it into a full-time position to up their ability to recruit. So it might work for somebody that way. You probably get a broader applicant pool when it's a full-time benefit position.
Right, good, thank you.
Other questions or comments?
One of the things that we've heard from the kind of initially appointed people for the Energy Committee and from Sustainable Williston is the importance of having somebody who can also grant write. And so wondering how that might kind of fold into this, if that is something that falls within the capabilities and scope of planning, or if that might be something that we, might end up falling onto Shirley. We don't want to, obviously you already have a very big job. So how that might be incorporated.
Yeah, all of our staff planners have some grant writing experience or are expected to pick some up. And, it's really kind of a form of project management, what we're doing. We're usually working with a state agency that provides us with pretty good guidance on, here's what you need to fill out and here's when you need to do it by. For Shirley's sake, if we get a grant, we tell Shirley, hey, we got a grant and let's set up an account and here's the timeline, and we coordinate from there. But I would expect this position to, they would be spending a fair amount of their time working on finding and using those opportunities.
Okay.
Other questions or comments? I think the next thing we need to think about this is probably next week to further talk a little bit about it and see whether we want to put it on the magic list of increases for the budget.
Okay. And that would, sorry, to think this through, whether we think part-time versus full-time.
Yep.
The other option would be, and the one that I tend to favor, is if we don't feel we can afford a full-time or a full salary, is as opposed to hiring somebody part-time, hire somebody for half a year, the second half of the year. Now, that's a full-time person, and you have to, we need to be cognizant of that. So when you go into the next year, it will be a fully funded position. But it's a way to help, ramp up, if you will.
Mm-hmm. And we've done that in the past.
We've done that in the past. That's why I'm a fan.
Yep. Any other comments or questions regarding this subject tonight?
Well, actually, just the energy plan, with the energy coordinator envisioned in the plan, are we looking at the same thing tonight, or the energy plan had energy coordinator had a lot of responsibility.
Yeah, that plan is an adopted plan, and I think that as we've run up against some of those goals in that plan with the current planning staff, some of them are more achievable than others. All plans are amended from time to time, and there may be a point either as part of the overall town plan. In fact, I would certainly anticipate changes to the energy plan happening in the 2025 town plan, where we might want to reassess some of those things. Or you've seen the implementation chart we've prepared before. Try to look at where those goals are best served. And if there's a goal in the energy plan that we thought the energy coordinator was going to take on, but it's actually happening at a statewide level or regional level, we can change that responsibility. Initially, I think the need, as I understand it, for a coordinator is to work with that committee to develop, a reasonable, achievable policy, pursuit of policy goals from the energy plan, with a little bit of, bang for the buck analysis at the same time of what of those goals are, short, medium, and long term, and have the greatest likelihood of success and the greatest energy savings, since that's what it's really all about at the end.
Thanks.
Nothing else on this one for tonight, then we can move on. Good, thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
We'll move on to the Recreation and Parks Department with Todd Goodwin, the Director of Recreation and Parks. And we'll talk about operating budget.
All right, operating budget, if you, just to point out, if you look at The revenue, we're about 14,600 less in revenue this year. And that is due to contracted programs, which we lost a couple businesses that we worked with in the past, have gone out of business in the area, contracted and contracted instructors are not offering things with the pandemic that we've been through this last year. So you'll see a $10,000 decrease in that. And we're working to build that back up, all the programs, but mainly the contracted ones. And we're using the school facilities somewhat, but less than what we have in the past. Again, staying out of the schools in the after-school programs, when the kids are there, doing things in the evenings, and doing the more, bringing back slowly the more popular programs that we know will go, and use that time. So that's a little bit on the revenue side. On the operation expenditures, the highest areas is administrative salaries, taking on the full-time coordinator's position and benefits, and then also the recreation program expenses. You'll see a large increase, but we took the senior program expenses and rolled them into recreation, rolled them into adult youth program expenses, and now calling it recreation expenses. So what we have is programs that the rec department runs, pays for and such, and then we have contracted where we're hiring other people to do it, and that could be contracted programs and or contracted camps. And then a few of the decreases, large decreases, again, under contracted programs, we decreased and taken a 3-year average. Didn't average in last year because of the impact we had, but that was the biggest piece. And that's on the recreation side. Happy to take any questions.
Questions on the recreation budget?
Not the operating.
So on to maintenance.
The other part is the park maintenance, and you'll see a large increase of 5,585 in the maintenance salary, and that is to extend that time frame. It was set at 32 weeks. It's going to now 36 weeks, and also looking to give that person a little bit better salary than what we've had in the past. And then the other large one is the maintenance, park maintenance is increased by 5,000. What we saw during the pandemic was the parks became more popular. People were outside as much as possible once they were allowed to go, and the parks is where they went. So we saw an increase of use of parks, and the budget last year and this year under park maintenance, we're spending down to almost the dollar limit type of a thing, using every amount of money. One of the examples of that would be we're on a 4-month automatic delivery of dog waste bags, and last year I had to order 2 cases, and a case is 6,000 bags, and that was above and beyond our regular 4 times a year type of thing. And I don't see that trend has not slowed down, so I may have to increase those. So those are the things that we're seeing, and just the use of the parks in general has increased. So that's the parks division of the operating budget.
Any questions for Todd on that? Are we going to do capital tonight on this one?
Yep, we can for Todd's. And there's a park section.
get my act together here. So let's go on into, to capital.
The park,
And we did number these, so it's number one
Yeah.
will be the first one in the park section.
the parks narrative does include the community parks and the country parks. So I oversee the community parks and Melinda oversees the country parks. And I know you'll be talking about the country parks next time with her. But we're still asking for the parks replacement at $15,000 a year. And the parks improvement at $20,000 a year. And for anybody who's new in that, the improvements is taking anything new that we add to the parks. And parks replacement is anything like a tennis court having to resurface it. So after so many years, having that money banked and available rather than coming and saying, oh, I need $10,000 this year. And next year I need 40,000 and so on and so forth. It's a continuous yearly fund, again, of 20,000 for the park improvements, 15,000 for the park replacements. And you have listed on there a worksheet of what we're looking to improve on. So in 23, under park improvements, we're looking to add basketball and hockey lines as well as basketball hoops to the rink area over at the Village Community Park. And right now that's been repaved to be a flatter surface. The rink goes on that surface. We put up a 4-foot chain link fence to separate the skate park from that. And the next step to that is having basketball, making it into a basketball court and inline hockey type of thing. So another area for them to use. And then looking to spend 35 out of this fund for a picnic shelter and amenities at Brennan Park, and that would be similar to the one that we have at Rosenthal Park. So just 4 picnic tables, a couple grills, picnic shelter for families to use on that. On the parks improvement, what we're looking to do is 14,000 on resurfacing the basketball court at Rosenthal Park. And right now it's a full-size court, and we're looking to go half court with one basketball court, and then the other half we're looking at making it a more or less asphalt play area. There's a daycare across the street. There's also the Department of Children and Families, which will go down there with supervised visits. And we've noticed that they'll chalk up the tennis court and such, and we've put up signs asking them not to do that. So we're looking to offer something with hopscotch, 4 square areas where they can chalk draw and that kind of thing. And the current space for the basketball court would allow us to have half court basketball as well as use the other half for what we're saying here. And you see also on there's $1,000 under each park for playground amenities. That has been taken out. That's on your list, but it was on mine. That's been taken out and put into the operating budget for park maintenance rather than capital. And what was decided was capital would be if we had to replace a whole playground structure at $20,000 or $30,000 rather than a slide at that $1,000. So that's what we're looking to do with those two. The other thing is Allenbrook Community Park. There's a placeholder of 40,000 in there right now, and we are currently working with SE Group Consultants for a Allenbrook Community Park Master Plan revitalization. I've gone through 2 steps of public meetings, and they're into the situation now of putting things into CAD and finalizing and whatnot. we'll have a presentation for all of you back sometime in March timeframe. But 40,000 right now is just kind of a placeholder, because we're anticipating the next steps would be permitting and engineered designs and stuff like that. So it may be more, which we would come back to you, but we found that this is a good number to start with. And that's rec impact fee money. So that's coming from towns or businesses and households and whatever else. So it's already money that we have in there. And I think currently it says here 256, 330, but there may be a little bit more than that in there in the rec impact fees. So that's the capital for the parks.
Good, thank you. Questions? No questions?
And just a comment to add for the board, you'll see for the revenue side of the parks replacements, we identified ARPA funds as a potential use there. That's one of their allowed uses for replacements, not improvements, due to use during the pandemic. It's in the proposal to consider as a way to offset, instead of using those dollars from the general fund to the fund balance, use ARPA as an offset to help decrease some of those other revenue stream uses. Up to the board's consideration throughout this process.
Okay. Are there other places in the budget, this budget, where ARPA dollars are targeted?
Yep, and we can identify those as we go.
Good,
I've got
that'd be great.
I've got a cover sheet in the front of the capital budget that lists everything there as well.
Good.
What's your thinking on the time frame in terms of the actual building of the park at this point? I assume, it'll go to a bond for the building part of it and all of that, but what do you see as the timeline for that to happen?
The consultants will give us phases, ideas, and they'll give us budgets with that. So it's all going to be up to select board and the community and the money that we can find. Do we phase it? Do we take a phase and make that a couple phases? Do we build it all out all at once type of thing? I would say that this new renovated revitalization plan is set for the next 10 years. And that, like the old one was set for 10 years, but nothing was done to it. It kind of was done and sat, and a couple things were done up there that needed to be done. Whereas my goal is, we've taken this, we've spent the money, the time, the effort. Let's see how we can move that along within the next 10 years to build out everything in the park.
But I would just add on that, it's impact fees have been collected for that specific park build out. So now we're in a position to spend down those impact fees with the park build out. And I believe the impact fee expires in another year or two. So part of we'll be looking at whether the town wants to extend that impact fee and looking at this project and others on the horizon as well as another source of revenue.
I'm sorry, Eric, did I hear you correctly? The impact fee expires?
The way it's, when it was set up in the town bylaws, the initial impact fee study, I believe, went through 2025. So when the initial impact fee was set, then it would need to be renewed in the bylaws, and we would have to have a study to help facilitate that renewal. So
Okay.
that's part of what I've talked to Matt about, and we can use recreation impact fees for that study to extend the impact fees.
Use the recreation impact fees to extend the recreation impact fee.
I had the same reaction, but
Creative use of money.
No, and it makes sense. I mean, I get it. It sounds kind of funny.
So if there's no other further questions, we'll move on. Thank you, Todd.
Okay, the only other thing is equipment, and I just wanted to point out that the Parks tractor and mower increased because of just going through and getting pricing and looking at the next 5 years of what that would cost to replace those. We just replaced a a zero-turn mower in 24 and 26. We have another mower and tractor to go, sort of a thing. And also, the number of years went from 7 to 6, because we're on a tractor right now that's going on 7 or 8 years in the old system, and we're starting to having to put money into it, which is, money you spend out and then money you don't get back on your trade-ins and stuff like that, so.
This is a different section of the capital budget, the equipment tab, and it's page 10 in your capital budget book.
Thank you.
Sometimes there's a little bit of jumping here with the.
There's also a pickup truck on page 11.
Yep, the pickup truck has not changed.
Any further questions on this side? No further questions, huh? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So we'll move on then to the police department budget. Chief Foley and Lieutenant Moore are here to deliver the goods.
Good evening.
Welcome.
We're back.
That's why bad pennies always return, is that?
Thank you for allowing us this evening to present the FY23 budget. A few things I want to comment on before we get into the gist of the budget presentation and our capital presentation. But on the summary of our services, what I want to do is highlight one main topic there, which is our K-9 Duke program. If you're well aware, back in 2021, we presented to the board the concept of having a therapy dog here in town. Lieutenant Moore presented it, did the research and all that, and we got the blessings. And over a year and a half later, it's been a success. From its in-step, the community support, the donations, as we reiterated during our presentation, that it would be privately funded, and we've kept our word with that program. We've had numerous sales of T-shirts, stuffed animals, face masks, and most recently a book that 2 weeks ago during a pop-up we sold out within 2 hours. We have another 125 on back order. It should be here within the next 2 weeks. We believe it's going to be around the first of the year. But it's been a plus of it. Numerous, we did today's Tuesday, right? Yesterday we did a day-long presentation. We had a ride-along from the Free Press. One of the reporters spent the day with Officer Cohen, who's the handler, and K-9 Dupe, and I closed out in the afternoon. So over the holidays, there'll be probably a front-page article about our program here. So it's bringing a lot of positive to the community, and I want to thank Lieutenant Moore for spearheading the project, and Duke and Officer Cohen for making the program look very positive for the community here of Williston. My introduction letter seems like a Groundhog's Day story, deja vu. It seems like it's a revolving door that, when I started in 2017, we were actually within 2 weeks of my swearing in, we were down 5 positions, and that theme has been consistent during the 4+ years I've been here. Like I noted in my presentation, we've only been at full strength with 2 months. And so currently we are down 3 positions as noted. So a lot of our plans that we wanted to do has been stagnated. The only thing that we were able to complete was to create a lieutenant's position, again, with the blessing of the town manager and the board, and he's sitting to my left, and it was a correct decision that we made here for the continuation and the performance of our police agency. We have we finally got today word that the next police academy will be on the 21st of March. So we currently have one candidate that is scheduled. We're going to try to get that candidate waived. I am meeting with the director and the deputy director of the academy tomorrow during a chiefs meeting and set up some time after the first year so we can present a case to them about the hours this candidate we have should be waived. They've already completed a full-time academy in New York State, and they've completed 5 years of Rule 13 training. She's current of all her training. So again, well, hopefully if we can get a waiver, that one less person we have to send to the academy. We do have a second female candidate in the queue, but she hasn't taken in the entrance requirement. That's going to happen in January because the holidays and all that. The good thing is that the way they've designed the next academy, which is a plus for agencies, is that normally if you went for the orientation, you failed any part of the orientation, the run, sit-ups, push-ups, whatever they made you do, that you were completely, eliminated and have to start from square one again for the next guy. They're going to give you 3 chances to get to the academy. There'll be no cap on the amount of students they're going to be able to get in there. So that's good for us. The other thing is that, now that the union contract has been approved and in the process of being signed by the union, some of the caveats we have in there, including the increase in longevity, the educational incentives, the salary, the step increases, we're going to recreate our job description and our job announcement to add those, and I think those perks will probably attract some really qualified candidates like we've talked about. So that being said, I'm sure if you have anything to continue with that.
I think just before we get into any of the revenues and budgetary type stuff, I think it's just important to note, since Greta mentioned grants, and I know Jeff and I have had a couple conversations throughout the summer. In the last 12 months, we've...
Over that, you got to go back to the COVID.
Yeah, that was last December.
Yeah.
We had just moved in. We've gotten about $325,000 in awarded grants. 100,000 of that was to build out the officers' room. That came through the COVID grant money, so that was partially for, it went through because of how the tight quarters that the officers were living in, so we were able to expand that and really get an up-to-date type officers' room for them. Another $75,000 was to put a fiber optic cable that connected the police department now all the way down to the firehouse. So we are providing, telephones to them in the town and everybody else. And then the one that I just completed and we just are getting started on was another $155,000 camera grant. We actually had the money budgeted through capital to upgrade our camera system in the police department because it was starting to fail. I came across a Homeland Security grant that I was able to get $150,000. So our entire building is getting completely redone. The town hall is getting 3 more cameras installed, and the fire department, which has never had anything, is getting a complete install as well. And everything is now, because of that fiber optic project, everything is fed back to the police department. So ideally ours is the most secure facility, and it's able to house all that sensitive criminal justice and every other type of information possible. So Sergeant Eric Shepard has helped me with the technical part of some of this stuff, because that's kind of his wheelhouse. So we've worked together, and we've received quite a bit of funds through the federal government. So that's always a plus, and it should go to good use.
And one final thing is that we were awarded a bulletproof vest reimbursement grant through the federal government, through the COPS office. So replacement will be half the cost for the town, and the other half is picked up by the COPS office. So that's another plus. And it's not a lot of money because everybody believes they're expensive, but they only replace the vests, the shields, all the add-ons, the carriers and the carry-ons and all that is on us, but the vest itself we'll split the cost on that. So our budget, we can go down through every line, but I'll highlight where the big increases are, and then you can ask questions on The biggest thing is personnel. So we'll start a communication during the year due to some bumps in the road from the state police. We needed to add a third full-time dispatcher. In doing so, again, we presented our case to the board, and we were able to fill and add on a third full-time. In doing so, that allowed us to have 3 dispatchers. So the senior dispatcher, we elevated to a supervisory position. So now we actually have a supervisor supervising dispatchers. And then the supervisor of the supervising dispatchers was supervised by Lieutenant Moore. So that has increased. Now, talking about communications, I'm not sure if you've heard, you're out of the State House now, Terry, but about 2.5 months ago, we got word from the state police that they want to get out of the dispatching business. They only want to dispatch for themselves, just state police. So we originally were told anywhere from 12 to 18 months that the transition, you'd have to find, somebody to dispatch for you. We found out that number has changed. It's now 9 to 12 months. We're not sure when the start date is, because there's some other stuff that the commission has talked about getting the state to pay regional dispatch who are currently existing to pick up those agencies that have to leave the state police. So we're not sure. This Friday at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, we have a conference call with the commissioner to get the finer details. Sergeant Shepard is on a subcommittee of that, so we understand where it's coming from. So, we're pretty much set with our 3 dispatchers, and we can add a 4th dispatcher if we need to be 24 hours, 7 days a week. We've got all the infrastructure there. We were originally going to be charged like $55 a call, so we can offset that. And if the governor wants to throw money our way to add that 4th dispatcher, we'll be gladly with our hands out asking to help and all that. Again, we were part of the Chittenden County Regional Dispatch setup, but that's still in the plan stages. I know we've had conversation with the town manager. They're still waiting for committed funds and complete buy-ins, but you just can't wave a magic wand and one day it's operational. There's still a lot of work to be done. We can wave a magic wand and be operational tomorrow if we have to add a 4th dispatcher. So that's one of the concerns we have on our communication budget. That's why, if you notice, that has gone up over 100,000, about 150,000 this from last year to this year. The patrol side, that's the biggest jump due to the contract, the longevity, the incentive, the college educational incentives. That has been really a big jump for us. Some of the changes that we notice is we pay into the Chittenden Unit for Special Investigation. Just yesterday, we were told that our assessment has gone down. For the current year we're in right now, for the FY22, went down for about $3,300, and for the next year, FY23, the new allotment is down about 3,000. About 3,000. So the number you had there, we put 18,450. It's now down to 15,257. So that's a decrease in that allotment.
Chief, how do they assess that number?
We had the formula. They sent us the formula on that.
I can forward that to the board. I got a report. I know it's decreased. It's something with a UVM police are going to have someone who's no longer in the Kuzi rotation. So that offsetting cost of sending an officer, UVM's expense is going up. So then that offsets every other member's expense.
It used to be done by the number of, well, in part anyway, by the number of calls that Kuzi received or cases they received from a town.
Yeah, I believe that's still a component of it.
Yeah.
I'll dig into it.
Have we ever had somebody on Kuzi?
No, we just can't afford it. That's one of the things we talk about. We get a BCI position, detectives positions. It'd be 2 positions. I know, we've talked about doing a management study, but I went back to my strategic plan that I presented to the board back in 2018, and I recommended a minimum of 4 additional officers based on just the standard population of 10,000 that the town was, not including the daytime population, and, you know, using the different formulas of what the FBI recommended, you know, per 1,000 per officers is like, you know, 2.3 officers per 1,000. I think the study that the fire department had, I think it was 1.8, 1.9 per 1,000. So again, it's consistent. So, you know, 4 or 5 additional people, I can make it work very easily and gives me everything I want. You know, each shift with 3 patrol and supervisor, 2 people in BCI. Each shift has a dedicated traffic person in that shift, and somebody else is dedicated to do other special community policing. And we still have our BCI people, and probably another supervisor in BCI to oversee the detectives. And Lieutenant Moore would be the ultimate overseer of the patrol side. So again, that's whenever we get to the magic number, but you know, I know we've talked about, you know, getting through this budget year and then doing a study to, you know, finally articulate the needs. You know, everybody talks about the pyramid wall study when they're talking about building out Taft Corners, and everybody's talking. People come up to me, ask me what the study is. I've heard 25 to 40 officers for the PD back then and when they're discussing. So if you do so I can't find it, but everybody talks about it. So, but again, that was back in the 1980s and really 1990s when they were discussing the build out of Taft Corners.
They were also talking about spraying their effluent over the forest at one point, weren't they?
Good, what?
The Pyramid Mall was talking about spraying their effluent out over the forest as a way of, yeah.
Yeah. Like a ski area.
To answer your question, I have the calculation here, it's now based on population.
Okay.
It's based population, not on population.
Okay. All right, I think that's fair. All right, thank you.
And the other thing with QC is that I know Burlington is strained, you know, they're talking about removing people from there and putting them back in the patrol side and rotating them. So I'm not sure if that number will start going down again. So yeah, when I looked at the study, it said that we referred 14 cases last year to them. So. So that's it on the budget. If anybody has a particular question on a line item within the budget, I figure I'd concentrate on the big increases.
I'm trying to understand the communication. And let me tell you what I think I know. Tell me where I go wrong. We're adding a new dispatcher from 2 to 3.
Correct. Yep.
And we're also adding overtime where there wasn't overtime in the previous budgets. So maybe my logic is wrong, but I would think that if we're adding a new full-time person, we would, if anything, see overtime go down. But yet we're adding a new full-time person and seeing a significant increase in overtime. So I just want to make sure I understand that.
Yeah, what it is that we really have no part-time staff. So all the vacation time off they need is covered by a full-time person at time and a half. Okay. We have 2 part-time employees that cover the best they can, and we figured out, I think we did 100 hours.
But Jeff, it's really that we added someone, as Steve said, they rely on the folks that have to do all of the coverage get covered, but it's really that we've broken it out into 2 lines in the budget this year. So
I'm sorry, I had trouble hearing that last bit.
it's really that we've broken it out into 2 lines in the budget, so we have regular wages and now overtime wages, so that we can track the 2 components better instead of just all mushed together.
Okay, so the previous budgets, it was just one lump.
Yeah, it was all included. If you look, if you go back last year and look in the comment, the narrative, it tells you how many hours we figured for the overtime being included. So each, like the 2 new dispatchers, they get 2 weeks vacation. And then they have, you know, if they're sick, we got to cover that. You know, if we flip the coin, we might say, okay, let the state now, you know, within a few months, we might not be able to say we can flip the switch and give it to the state. So, but it basically, it's covering the shifts when we don't have, because both part-time dispatchers are full-time employees in the other, in different agencies. So a lot of times their bosses don't like them working part-time because they'll need them at their agency. And one basically is limited because of the COVID. Their employer does not want them to be outside.
And when we dedicated those hours to a full-time person, we really do try to fill those with overtime if that one dispatcher's out, just to try to give the state police some reprieve, because they're still losing people left and right. And now we've switched over to a new RMS system, which is a little bit more intense for the dispatcher to be doing. And we've actually are now required to do some of the case creation on our own when we're being dispatched by state police. They won't do it for us. So it's actually adding a little bit of work onto the officers. So by having an in-house person, the officers here in Williston are getting a little bit more assistance during their normal day-to-day.
Okay.
So
And how far in the future is a decision about the regional dispatch?
I think that goes to Eric. He's been the one that's kind of been listening.
I can speak to that. I sit on that board, and we're watching to see how the state may commit funds. As Chief mentioned, the biggest hurdle for CCPSA right now is the startup capital. So we are hearing the governor may likely have a proposal in his budget to use some of the state level ARPA funds as one-time startup for regional dispatch centers, and we've got the governance and the infrastructure moving well along over the last few years. So it will be a discussion for this board as we get some more answers about startup, what our future for dispatch for both of our public safety agencies looks like. I hope to have more answers into the spring on that, because that'll certainly be a longer term service delivery model. What if we receive that for one agency, both agencies, neither agency? So we'll look at all those options once we have some more guidance from the state.
Okay.
Yeah, we hope we'll have a better answer Friday when we sit in on the meeting with the commissioner. It went from charging us to not charging us to get rid of us and all that, but I still think, when they first started talking about charging us, that, a lot of these small agencies rely on the state police to dispatch, and it's been free for years. And, I think they're gonna be calling their legislators and their senators saying, hey, you gotta help us out here. So I think that might be slowed down, and it's gonna slow, because the legislature will come back in January. I think that'll be probably one of the big discussions they're gonna have, because there's only, right now, you have the state police. So you basically have Williston and Westminster State Police as regional dispatch. You have Shelburne, you have Lamoille County, you have Hartford. That's it. I don't think there's anybody else. And Central Mass, but it's only a two-town.
Did you say St. Albans City?
Yeah.
Did you say?
Yeah.
Or Central Dispatch,
Yeah. So there's not a lot out there, and you don't know what they can add on. So that's a concern I have. But, I think we're fortunate enough to be able just to, and I've been approached by some other agencies saying that if and when this happens, would we be willing? And I haven't committed anything. Just like went over my head. I didn't hear that. Yeah. So.
Other questions on operating? Yeah, if not, we can go on to capital, and I think 5 different things you had on capital.
Yeah, I rearranged it in my order to make it flow easier for me.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you where we're going to start, if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman, is that the fleet vehicle replacement one is the first one we start with.
Yep.
Chief, I can just get the page number for the board here.
Okay.
That's going to be under the equipment section, and it's going to be on page 1 of the equipment section.
And just so people know, one thing I noticed with the equipment section is there's some duplicate numbered pages. So when you say go to page 10, I went to a page 10.
I don't have any page numbers on mine. So.
Yeah, so just beware.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, no worries. Just it did take me a second.
No problem. What we did is that we combined all our vehicles into one fleet management replacement. As you're well aware, up until this year, is the police chief had a separate capital project. I don't treat mine as a different, mine's a cruiser. You know, I have all the equipment in, you know, I can do everything in it. And so we decided to make it under one capital plan. So we have 6 marked units and then 4 unmarked units. The unmarked are mine, the lieutenant, the K9, then we have an extra cruiser that we use when we have somebody in detectives and all that. So as we start replacing the frontline cruisers, the ones with the low miles will be moved down the chain. So, you know, it might go to the Comfort Dog program. We might replace the detectives and then replace them. We're on a 2.5-year cycle to replace cruisers, so we've got it built out over the years when we're going to replace them. The difficult part now is that everybody's behind the 8 ball because the production is very slow. We went, Lieutenant today went with the sergeant to talk to him, and basically they told us that after the first year, you should order your cruisers now, and you might get them in September, October, November. So again, you got to get in line and all that. And then the other bump in the road is that the computer chips, you know, everybody is still not getting them. So again, we try to do it that way, so we know that we're in line. We go through the state bid process. So the state does all the paperwork and the bid, and they select the vendor who we should go to for all different models. So if we want Ford, we want Chevrolets, we want, you know, Dodge, you know, those type of vehicles, they bid that for us, so it's less work for us. We used to, if you remember last year, we used to have a breakdown of every item we put in the car, radios, lights, you know, and all that. It just became too complicated. So we figured out what each cruiser will cost so a brand new mock unit would cost us from, you know, build out complete with all the equipment we need, cages, you know, racks, lights, radios, computers and all that. It's about $85,000. And then for the unmarked, it's a lot less because our cruiser lights are different. We don't put bar lights on, we put, you know, small lights and all that. So for an unmarked unit, it's 58 and all that. So we look at replacing a minimum of 2, some years 3. You notice we have a pickup truck out there. We will not have any more pickups. It's just that, again, the plan was going to be the truck unit. You know, we had scales and all that, but there's not many spots here in Williston you can pull over a tractor trailer and weigh it on North Williston Road, you know, you drive them up to the interstate and at the rest area. So we rely on Department of Motor Vehicles to assist us if we need a truck team out here and all that. So that pickup truck will be converted to another SUV. And so it'll be a lesser cost to replace that. The good thing is that when we auction them off, we get good resale. The last vehicle, which was a 2019, we got almost 17.5. It had over 60,000 miles, and so that was a good trade-in we got for that. So and we go through Hirschacks as our auction person. So we drop the vehicle off, they do all the paperwork, and then they send us a nice check to our finance. So, and that goes back in here as our savings and current savings and all that.
Can you talk a little bit about, I'm looking at the difference between the manager approved and the requested amount for fiscal year 2023. Is that?
What we did is that we exceeded the top level cost, so we went over that. So we were able to reduce that this year and use our savings. We believe we'll be within that range of 160 for the replacement vehicles. And we do have some savings, so that'll be offset. And then if you notice the next year's, you know, next year, 2024 is up to 200. Right. And then 2025, it's 220, and it goes 220 the rest of the way. So we're all set. So we have savings. That's a good thing with the savings. And when we sell the cars, that gives us a little nest egg to play with that.
Yeah, we took a look at this. We reduced this line a little bit last year down to 100, and you know, looking back at it, it was quite a jump in 1 year. So we did some work, and we think we can smooth this impact and still get the fleet replaced. next couple of years with that 2 to 3 vehicles. And the truck factors into this a bit too. We deferred the truck for a year and now decided not to replace the truck and create some more savings there.
Yeah, during the pandemic, we held off, and the good thing is that we ended up putting a brand new motor in the pickup truck. So that gave us a free, almost a new pickup. That extended the life of that for another 2 years, so it worked out.
And then, am I reading this correctly, that the department has 20 vehicles, total of 20 vehicles?
No, we only have 10. 6 marked units and 4 unmarked units.
Okay.
I think you might be seeing the equipment, Jeff, is broken out. So that
Okay,
might be
all right. Yep, I see how that, okay, I see how that works. Okay.
We're going to police technology, if there's no more questions on police cruisers. I don't know what page that number is.
That's
3.
3.
And for FY '23, the major purchase would be a new server for our agency. And if you look at like some of the stuff like the camera replacement and the recorder, we were able to, with the grant that Lieutenant got, that'll help us with the camera replacement and all that.
I'm embarrassed that I don't know this, but speaking of cameras, do we have uniform cameras for our officers? Body cam?
Body cameras, no.
No, we have in-car video cameras. That the most of the incidents we have are basically motor vehicle stops or a crime in the middle of the roadway. And once you turn your lights on, it's recorded.
Yeah.
Eventually, Ted, that, depending how the legislators operate, that'll be a mandate down the road, probably an unfunded mandate.
Yeah.
So we've been looking at the cost. Some communities are starting to get them. So again, it's not a cheap. The biggest thing is storage.
Just data storage?
Yeah, that's most expensive. We have come up with some solutions on how to minimize those costs a little bit, but and it has to do with like storing in the cloud and everything like that. And that's a technical thing that Eric could always come back if we ever decide to go that route. Currently, like the chief said, we do have the in-car cameras. Those are dash. But we also upgraded a couple years ago where we started putting them in the rear of the vehicles too. So when you do have a prisoner, those are recorded as well. And each officer does wear mics. So, within a certain distance, you can hear all the conversations on the video cameras. You can activate those outside the vehicle and everything like that. So.
The next thing on the agenda is traffic safety equipment.
Page 2.
Basically, these are our speed monitors we have out in the town. We have 2 trailer units, and we have a few on the poles. And we also have we call it a stealth or a covert one that we can put out in neighborhoods and nobody knows what it looks like. Again, the thing is that, after about 5 years, that once you see that thing on the pole and you see the speeds go down, they don't go up. So it gives us sometimes a false read, and because people are actually doing what they're supposed to be doing. But what we do is once we do it with the trailer, we put the covert out also. So we have 2 studies that we could just, add in and come up with an actual speed of that roadway. And if you go on our webpage, we have all the studies out there. So if you're inquisitive to see what certain streets are, then look at it and all that. But again, it's kind of hard, when you're short to dedicate people, but we target every neighborhood every week. Each officer has a certain number of streets that they have to target, do direct patrols on, to be visible. So they're out there, and that hasn't stopped since the pandemic came in. We instituted that, and it's been a blessing for us. And people really appreciate seeing a cruiser going to the neighborhoods. So we're in the process of probably replacing at least one of them. We've been going to solar now on them. It's a little more costly, but life expectancy is a lot You know, one of them, we actually built our own solar unit on it to fix it.
And those used to die all the time. So you'd put them out, and then within maybe a week, you'd have to pull it back in and let it sit inside and charge for a while. Now we have the capability of just moving it from one location to the next. So they don't ever come back to the office anymore. So that's why we're able to put them out for
10 months out of the year. we have
yeah,
them
300
out
days a
there.
year. They're able to sit out there and no, we don't write tickets off them. There's no video recordings. It's all just for data. So that way we can graph it and just kind of see what the trends are showing on our roadways.
The next thing on the agenda will be firearms.
Number
I'm sorry, what page is that?
page
Usually firearms, handguns need to be rotated or moved anywhere between 5 and 7 years. We currently carry 40 caliber. We're going to downsize and go to 9 millimeters. We believe it's a better weapon for us, especially in a very congested community with all our shops and all that tap corners. We're looking at possibly doing, you know, if we can get a good trade in, but we might push the purchase for the FY23 budget. If not, then we'll wait till the following year. Again, everything is cost and manufacturer. But, you know, I think on the ammunition will be a lot less. And I think for accuracy, the 9 millimeter would be better for our officers out there. Continuing, the next one will be the police department door access controls.
So this will jump sections into the buildings.
Where is that go to?
It'll be the first tab after introduction in your packet, and that would be page 5.
Everybody ready?
Yep.
Our police department will be 15 years old this year. And we're finding out, if you look at this one and the next one I do on the building, is that it's starting to fall apart. We have access, electronic access to all our doors into the building, and everything's starting to fail, and we can't get the parts for it. So everything has to be, you know, new. That means possibly new doors, new frames, new electronics. So we decided that, you know, we had originally started planning it over the last 3 years of doing, you know, a few a year, and it's been really ridiculous trying to find a vendor to do piecemeal. So we decided to opt to, you know, go right at it and replace everything at once over the next 2 years. It's a safety issue for not only for the officers and the employees, but for the people that come into the building. So, and the thing is a lot of the stuff that was purchased back when the building was built, a lot of those businesses have gone away. So actually bringing a new company, a company that specializes in, you know, door locks and maintenance and all that. So, you know, we had to do one for the back door 2 years ago, and it was like a really terrible, you know, cut and paste type of lock. So we want to get somebody that can do everything at once, do it professionally, and that'll give us another, you know, 10 years before we have to replace that again.
Why is this line item or this item broken into 2 years?
It's more for just cost savings. We can get away with doing it over 2 years. So the technical term for how our doors look is called Swiss cheese, because there's so many holes in them now that then take metal plates. So if you look at some of our doors, there's actually metal plates because we've had to replace the door locks because they fail, but they don't match up with the old ones, none of the holes. So we have to have a vendor come in and just start drilling the new holes and putting different locking mechanisms on them. And you know, like I'm in charge of the evidence room, and mine for the evidence room failed. So we had to go back to just a key for a little while, which is not the best practice until we could get up and running again. So the 41,000 up front, that allows us to buy what they call the brain of the system. So the central locking system, there'll be one computerized system that will function the entire building. So it will talk to all the different doors. With the 41,000, we can get the brain installed and we can get the main access points to the building. So the front for the officers and the rear for the officers of the building, we can get those up and running. And then the following year, we can then turn around and get the rest of them up and going.
Okay.
So by spreading it out over 2 years, it was more just a cost savings to try to spread it out.
Okay. Okay. I had just assumed, and I guess I misinterpreted, that it was primarily 1 or 2 doors, but it's a whole slew of doors.
There's
Yeah. 8?
I think there might even be more if you count the upstairs, because then we house the CJC upstairs. So, you know, years ago, we had to actually put a door, we had to build a door into one of the hallways to keep the secure side for like the officers' locker rooms and everything like that separate. And this, just history-wise, it was before I got here, but this was actually supposed to be installed when that building was first built. But due to overages, that's one of the cuts that came out of it.
Interesting.
So, but, and obviously now it makes it much harder because now they're gonna have to run the wires through all the bricks and drilling and everything like that versus where it would have already had the power to it, so.
How are you gonna get in if there's a power outage?
Most of them you can override with keys.
Yeah.
But not to like the evidence room is specific, you know, because there's a master key for most of the doors, but
Our police station must have a generator.
Yes,
it
we
does,
do.
yeah. And the other problem is because they're failing, we've actually had officers get locked into the processing room. There is an exit at a processing, obviously for fire code, so then they gotta go out that door and then find their way all the way around and you know, you may have a prisoner in there. And then prop doors open, and it's not sustainable, the system we got, so.
And I would just add on that one, that's another project we identified ARPA funding actually for use this coming year.
And would you anticipate that for both years, or?
It could be, you know, if the board decides to split this over 2 years, we could see what our options are in 24. This is also something that the board wanted to complete it sooner rather than later, could increase the ARPA allocation there out of the lost revenue to move this project along sooner.
Okay.
And if there's leftover Homeland Security funds, I would venture to try to
Okay, yeah.
bury that in there. I know it closed, but sometimes they come back and say, hey, we have extra money. So if that does happen, I would at least try to put in for that as well.
Okay, good.
I assume these new doors, you are anticipating the same challenges with them when they start to fail, hopefully.
No, so this system should be forever.
Yeah.
Because at least as long as the infrastructure is in there, you can swap them out. I mean, they probably said that the first time with those ones, but
They mean it this time.
yeah, at least they'll be powered to the doors, so you have the ability to change them out.
Yeah, and if you look at it, there are different type of locks on
Yeah.
different doors in there. They're not consistent because it's piecemeal how you fixed and replace them, so.
And believe me, before I started looking into it, I just figured you had a key and unlocked the door. I didn't realize it was as technical as this, but.
The next thing will be the police department building.
That's just on the next page.
Okay.
As I started, our building is 15 years old, and it's starting to show 15 years of problems. We're constantly trying to fix our HVA system, our sprinkler system, our fresh air, and that. So I started a discussion last year during the pandemic with the town manager that we needed somebody to be a a maintenance person or a manager of our building, not just my building, but possibly joining the fire department, the town hall, and have a maintenance manager overlooking everything. You know, we had them fix the roof a couple of months ago, but there's issues up there that the possibility will maybe be replaced. But the big concern is that, you know, today we had no heat in the back part of the second floor. The system failed again. I believe it's the motor that keeps tripping. It's getting overheated and it's tripping and all that. So we've been working with one of the local building companies to come up with a solution for us. But we decided that, you know, after 15 plus years, that we need to really take a close look if we want this building to last another 15, 20 years. So we feel there's a need to bring somebody on to oversee our building, the fire department. You know, they just replaced their roof, and that building's only 15 years old, and they've already put a roof in there. I think their furnaces have been replaced. You know, it's just, again, it's a concern that I have. You know, we're told by our sprinkler system that, you know, some of the work was incorrectly done. So we're waiting for them to come back and correct that. And then it's just, we're a public safety agency, so we want to make sure public safety is correctly done. So, and Josh, as the lieutenant's been spearheading this, working with, you know, the various people coming in, taking a look at the operations and coming up with ideas and course for us. So, you know, yeah, he has a knowledge of construction, so I trust him and bringing people in. So.
Yeah, and I did this portion of it. It was more just a shot in the dark, just to try to get a line item started. You know, ideally this probably should have been done 10 to 15 years ago when the building was built, even if it wasn't a lot of money. But as we're seeing, you know, if there would have been correct maintenance done, we wouldn't be having the issue of mold right now and having to have all our HVACs fixed and getting that large cost. Don't let the fire chief know, but our sprinkler system was installed incorrectly from day one, and apparently we've never passed inspection on that. So that's getting remedied once I found out about that system. So we're getting back to where we should be. Fortunately, we had a contractor that stays on top of it, and but like I said, this is more of just to try to get a line item in there and start setting aside some funds, so that way when we do have these larger unexpected issues, we at least have something to use for that.
And is there really 4 furnaces in that building?
Yes.
There's 4 TRAN systems for the furnaces, and then there's also 4 AC units up on the rooftop, and those all have.
So the building is divided into 4 sections
Yeah, 4 zones, whatever.
with 4 different
Wow.
thermostats. So it's been, since I've been there, it's been a cold building. And we've done everything to try. And then once we brought this company in, they figured out what, you know, what the controls were and all that. But again, I think it's the motor on the heating unit and the back section that it's going, because we thought we had it fixed and then it was cold. So. And the final thing that I just want to just touch base on, it will be the public safety communication tower. We're not going to go into debt, but it's in here as a starter. I think we've already had some conversation. I think the Williston Observer did an article on it.
And just for note, the portable section on there, there was actually leftover 2019 Homeland Security funds for that, so we did swoop in there and just threw that out there. So I don't know if it'll go through or not, but as you can see, that's 20 portables at $7,100 a piece, so that's a pretty sizable award if we were able to grab that.
But there is a tower up on
Knob Hill.
Nob Hill. We started looking at, working with the people who own the property, own the tower and all that, with the fire department. And again, communications on a section of this town are really poor. So this is an opportunity. It's been in the early stages, but we needed to start, like Josh was saying, we needed to put some money into that and start looking at it. But this is going to be a project that, you know, we're going to take the correct steps, because it's a need not only for police, fire, but also it helps our public works There is dead zones in this community. Again, it's awkward for here in Williston because we're in a landing path for the airport. So where we build our towers, we have to abide by rules. So we want to make sure this is all done. But the people who currently own that property in the tower are really working with us on that, and they want to see this project be successful. So again, we're not in a high-speed lane, but, you know, we started the project in very small steps and all that, but we wanted this to come out here, so when you see it down the road, if it's done and we get, you know, successful with it being built and doing what we want to do, then our communication for all our agencies within Williston will be greatly improved.
And it's just food for thought. No matter which avenue we go for any dispatching services, these are things that are going to happen anyways. So these are for fire and police, that no matter which route we go, we are going to have to upgrade our communications in town. So.
And I would just add on that, this is a critical piece of public safety infrastructure for the town. Sergeant Shepard's been taking a lead on this. We're putting some numbers together. We put some rough estimates here of 1.5 million. It's a big number. The tower and the equipment that would need, and this will that radio portable cost for the police built into this capital sheet. I've asked Sergeant Shepard, when he gets the final numbers and some information from Motorola, to come to a future select board meeting to really walk through this project in more detail for the board and what the issues are. This is a potential use of some ARPA money as well, but our ARPA money wouldn't cover this entirely. So I'll be looking at some other possible avenues to fund this moving forward, with direction from the board after you get a full sense of what the scope is of this project.
What will be the floodgate thing that will happen that will allow this to move forward?
Sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
I may not have phrased that well. What is the critical thing that will allow this to move forward? For instance, is it getting rights or an easement to the land? Is it?
Yeah, I would say the property owners have been. We've had a working group with them this fall, and they've been very receptive to work with us on it. Vermont Electric Co-op up on Butternut Road. So I think we have a good dialogue with them about moving this project forward. I think the critical piece is going to be how we pay for it.
Okay.
And there would be multiple stakeholders, because frankly, a lot of utilities would probably be involved and want at least a part of that. So it doesn't just necessarily have to be a police radio or tower or just a fire radio tower. It can serve multiple different utilities and facilities throughout the area. So it really benefits a lot of other industries as well. So.
Right, outside of town.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Do you anticipate this will be in next year's budget? Okay.
There's a lot to it.
Yeah.
You know, equipment and everything like that, and planning and zoning and everything like that. You know, our hope is that our current stuff continues to operate. This really came to a head because there was a failure on the fire end of things, and you know, that's kind of what brought it to light, and we were like, we really got to start moving this up and really start getting some planning going on. And you know, 1.5 is a large number, so I think it's only right to do all the planning and spread it out and make sure we're doing it correctly.
Okay, all right, good enough, thank you.
Any other questions for Chief and Lieutenant? I think we would appreciate any information you can get to us from the meeting that you have on Friday.
Well, I plan to do that, don't
Chief and Lieutenant, I don't know if you wouldn't mind just sharing briefly on the electrification of police cruisers. And touch on that a little bit.
It's one of those things that maybe in 5 years, you know, we're kind of in that wait and see. You know, obviously the technology is getting a lot better every single day. I know GM's coming out with some really good technology in 23. Richmond PD just got a Tesla. So they're kind of still trying to work out the kinks. It is upfitted, so it does have the police package stuff in it. So it does have radios, lights, everything like that. One issue I know that they're starting to see is there's about a 20% drop in life on the battery due to the cold. My only thing is that, you know, 5 years down the road, I'm assuming that's all going to get better. So there is a plan this summer, for the back parking lot to be rebuilt.
Yeah, but part of the capital budget proposal will be potentially in FY24 to do back parking lot improvements here on the municipal campus. And part of that thinking will be enabling upfitting for charging stations for potential police fleet.
Yeah, so I've had talks with Bruce, and he's going to keep us in the loop and allow us to be part of the process. Definitely, if we're ripping it up, you got to get the fiber into the ground ahead of time. Maybe over where we currently park our vehicles, you could see some kind of canopy with panels on top of it. So then you have parking underneath to keep the snow off of them, but you also have charging stations, fast chargers right there. I would assume at some point law enforcement is going to go that way, especially since we put so many miles on and use so much fuel. I think it just comes down to, are there extra batteries possibly to help run the blue lights? Because the last thing you want to be doing is sitting on a scene and then your battery dies and you're stuck. But some law enforcement agencies have already started to switch to the hybrid.
Yeah, Essex PD, so we'll be able to go over and check with them and see how that's operational.
There's a lot of times that you want to be the first. Law enforcement likes to be the first. We were the first with the K9 program. Sometimes maybe with the electric vehicles, maybe you want to be the 1 year after to see how it's going and then go from there. But it is on the horizon. I think it is for everyday citizens as well. So we're definitely keeping an eye on that technology, and we won't be bypassed on that. We'll definitely get involved.
Right, with the plan, like Josh was saying, and the town manager was saying about the back lot, be nice to have ports there, so we can put the cruisers under, and keep the snow off, but charge them, and put, maybe solar panels on top of the port to assist us. So again, there's a lot of possibility, out in the back there. So,
And did I hear you correctly that they make a police package hybrid vehicle?
The Ford Interceptors, they do, yes.
yes.
Okay, cool.
I think Burlington may have a couple. Essex, like I said, just purchased a couple.
Yeah, they get 3.
So they're just they're kind of just popping up now.
Great.
We'll just kind of wait and see how they perform and evaluate it from there.
Yeah, a lot of agencies will go with their administrative officers first and to go electric. So people in BCI, people doing, parking enforcement, all that, to get a try, see how long they last, and then, branch into the patrol side and all that.
Good, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So moving on to the fire department, the budget for Chief Select. Welcome, Chief. I want the warm one.
Eric, do you mind giving me a link?
Oh, sorry.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, I'll give you an email.
I hope I'm going to bring a little bit more energy and color. I know you've been looking at black and white and numbers, and so you've seen my presentations before, and that's hopefully the platform that I'm going to share with you tonight. If we can get connected.
We always depend upon your graphics here.
Yeah. Well, I'm a very visual person, and as you know, you're already 2 hours into this. I don't know how you keep your eyes straight looking down through some of these. So hopefully we can bring you to a good spot. right. So, first of all, I want to extend my condolences publicly to the family that lost their home on Friday evening. That was a difficult situation for them, I'm sure, and our thoughts go out to each of them. Tonight, I'll take you through as really the high level here of the FY23 budget. And I understand that we are really the anomaly department that is carrying a big burden on this year's budget. To that end, when we met as a leadership team in the department, we really told our folks that we need to focus on needs and not wants, and to try to narrow this down and tighten up our budget to realize that the impact that the request for additional personnel is going to have. So we've tried to narrow the operating cost down to real actual cost as to represent what the impact of adding 9 staff potentially would be for the department. So we went into that with that in mind, and certainly we put a prioritization of the staffing in public safety and community risk, in addition to the emphasis of firefighter safety. So overall, the operating budget, if you exclude benefits and wages, is about a 5.7% increase. And considering the cost of living, I really don't see that as a major hurdle when we're trying to accommodate 9 additional staff potentially, and the costs that are associated with that. And we, of note, we conceded a number of capital items, and we'll go over that here in a minute, that were offset by grant awards. So much like the police department, the fire department was recipient of a number of grants this year that have allowed us to take advantage of deferring those costs. The administrative line, the notable jump to $10,000 in computer equipment from the $5,000 was that we have 6 computers that are ironically all coming up at their end of their life. So we contract with a local vendor to maintain all of our IT, and they had suggested 3 years, and this is actually our 5th year with these machines. So it's time for them to be cycled out. That would also add a single desktop computer per workstation for new staff. So we have a dedicated area where our firefighters do their incident reports and their EMS narrative for their electronic patient care reports. And this would add 1 more workstation there to allow them to get their reports completed. The computer apps and development line increased. That was simply because of the cost for the Outlook product and adding new persons to that, and new email addresses, and the licensure for Microsoft Outlook. And in addition, we had to add new funds for new hire expenses, including the physicals. In the equipment and maintenance line, we separated the fire uniforms from firefighting equipment. So last year, you would have seen in this FY22 budget that it was all firefighting equipment. And what I discovered is that we were buying uniforms and shirts and pants out of the same thing that we would buy technical firefighting equipment from, meaning fire hooks or nozzles or anything like that. And I really wanted to try to more accurately track where our uniform expenses are. And so we separated that out in that uniform line, and that number helps to offset some of our expense. And what we've been trying to do is, as funding allows, is to actually keep some inventory in stock in the fire department. One, with the model that we run as a combination department, you never know who's going to knock on the door. And the past practice had been, once you came in, then we would send you to get fitted for a uniform and sent out, and then order that. And there'd be a delay of 6 weeks or so before we could actually put anybody in a uniform. And so now we've tried to standardize that and have unhemmed pants that are sitting in the inventory, and then we'll just send it to a local seamstress and they'll hem them to the size. And so just a little bit more effective. So when somebody comes knocking on the door and wants to be a member of the department, that we show some inclusion and say, oh, absolutely, here you are, and welcome to the organization. The equipment maintenance, we had hoped that we would see, as you folks know, with the addition of a new engine and a new ladder truck, that the equipment maintenance line would decrease. Unfortunately, we haven't quite seen that experience yet because, one, those units are so new, and the existing apparatus, we continue to have some challenges with, and don't get me wrong, it happens all across any fire department, but when you have a $600,000 or $700,000 piece of apparatus, the maintenance costs are to be expected as high. And so our engine, our 2019 engine, is actually out on warranty repair because the paint was having issues. So that truck's been out of service at the repair shop for several months now, and it's in final paint right now. We hope to have it back by January. Our engine 2 has been out for 2 weeks with issues with the exhaust system in it and the diesel exhaust control and diesel emissions control. So luckily, we had the new units in the department, but we also have a loaner here from our vendor that was, we're running frontline. Actually, tonight, engine 2 just came back in service this evening and putting it back as I speak. So I look at equipment maintenance, and we just couldn't take the risk in FY23 to say we're going to lower that line yet because we still have aging fleet, and we'll take a harder look at that certainly in FY24. EMS equipment, in what we looked at here, and I'll give credit to Tony Samanskas. Tony is our EMS coordinator for the department, and Tony looked at this, and with the addition of additional staff, we also have more paramedics on staff. And so when our paramedics deliver care, our paramedics do so, and they have the ability to do more invasive procedures. And as you can imagine, the more invasive procedures that you do, yes, we have the potential to save more lives, but the equipment, the hardware, and the supplies actually cost more. So this is our best guess estimate of what that increase is going to look like, of about $3,300 because of the additional trained personnel on staff. As you heard Lieutenant Moore and Chief Foley speak of, the station needed its new roof, and this is one of the successes of the year here for the fire department. I thought you would appreciate the lines in this picture. This just shows the quality of workmanship that went into that. So I appreciate the select board support on replacement of that roof. The first floor of the station we had repainted in 2021, calendar year 21. The second floor will be placed on hold for FY23, and that's a cost savings measure. While the appearance needs it, I'm certainly certain that we can defer it without having it cascade and have an ill effect later on. We will have to, at the recommendation of the roofing vendor, we'll have to start looking at the exterior of the station because, as you heard Chief Foley speak of, that the caulking and the paint on the outside of the station is actually showing signs of wear, and there's opening up some of the joints that are on the fascia and trim boards there. So we were originally trying to push that forward in this year's budget, but knowing how tight it was going to be, this is an area that we elected to defer, and we'll again be exploring it in FY24. But we level funded all other lines within the facilities budget. EMS supplies, so EMS equipment we looked at before. EMS supplies is the day-to-day supplies, and we, again, the cost of materials is going up, and this is what this is reflective of. And we have the potential to run more incidents, more EMS incidents, where we anticipate to be around 1,200 incidents in FY23. The decrease, there is a decrease here, which I understand you always appreciate hearing, is that in the dispatch services line, as you heard Lieutenant Moore speak of, the Valcor RMS, which is the records management software that the state has transitioned to, in the FY22 budget, we had about $3,000 set aside for the CAD RMS link to from the CAD into our department incident reporting software that would build that bridge to automatically report. When I spoke to the state about that, developing the bridge for our existing fire department RMS, the state assures me that that cost will be borne by the state, that we will not have to build that link and that they would pay for it. Of note, though, that is not live within the fire dispatch system. So I believe that it, as Josh said here earlier, that it's gone live for the police department. It has not gone live on the fire side of the house yet. One of the new projects that we're excited to roll out in the fire department is the addition of a learning management system. The saturation of how busy our staff was didn't allow for curriculum development. So when we were trying to roll out continuing education classes, both in fire, EMS, or technical rescue disciplines, we were spending a lot of staff time focusing on the shiny discipline of the day is best way of putting it is, all right, let's teach about this, but we couldn't do a wide array. So the captain did a bunch of research for us, and he came back with a proposal to look at a product called Fire Rescue One Academy. For the entirety of FY23, with all of the staff, including the new hires, our expense would be around $3,200 to do that. And what that does is gives us access to hundreds of hours of prepackaged fire, EMS, and rescue curriculums. So we could assign that out to staff instead of spending staff time on curriculum development. This is already vetted curriculum that goes out there, meets our continuing ed standards for both fire and EMS, so we don't have to second guess it or do a crosswalk on the matrices to make sure that it's valid and with the scope of our continuing ed requirements. So that's all at our thumbnail. In that as well is the instructor packet, which gives you the curriculum and instructional guides on how to teach that. So our folks really can have the step-by-step guide. They also include evaluation methods, so testing instruments that are part of that if we elect to test to a certain certification, and a training management system where all of our personnel have the ability to upload any of the training that they participate in. What I found is that we do a great job of training, we do a poor job of documenting that we did the training, and because that takes time. And so I've worked to try to build that, break that down so we didn't have so many barriers, but this LMS will allow people to have the correct credentials so you can go in and enter your own training in there without a barrier. So it's more efficient use of firefighter time and creation of educational content. We've actually initiated this relationship already. We've met with the Fire Rescue One Academy this year, and they've given us a prorated cost to roll this out effective in this budget year, and we'll begin that January 1st. Staffing, as everyone in this room knows, really is the crux behind the increase in your budget, the fire department budget. The limited career staff, the challenges that you've all heard about here through both my words and the words of the AP Triton Consulting, the decline in call staff personnel. I regret to inform you that I actually received a letter of intent to for our call lieutenant, one of our call lieutenants, to resign effective December 31st. Mm-hmm. So that takes us down a critical position, a person that had a lot of experience and a lot of historical knowledge of the department, not slowing down for us. We see an increased EMS call volume, and we continue to have troubles meeting the demand for service. We had fortunate by the end of the event on Friday night, we had 11 firefighters show up out of our department roster. I would say that after 3 a.m., after 2 a.m. on Friday evening, we ran 3 calls before the started shift change at 6:30 in the morning. And one of those calls was a critically ill patient where, we left the engine company sitting beside the road. And I had left the firehouse around 2:30. We got dispatched for a motor vehicle crash and came back in. And by that time, that we had one person that actually stood by, a probationary person that could do nothing but protect the security of the apparatus. So that person did help us in that way, but there was no other staff to help out. So it truly, this is, the staffing is a real issue, as you've all seen. And you've seen this slide before. This is the call staff payroll hours by month, and that trend continues. Of note, it only goes through August of 2021. The consultant had recommended, and we have discussed this here at the board, that this is the FY23 estimated wage scale cost for firefighter 1, the advanced EMT. And so this is a little bit higher than what you saw in the presentation the last time I was in front of you, and that has to do with COLA. And if you have any questions, I'll defer to Shirley about trying to explain that, because Shirley and I were working on that today, and she's still, I'll give her the expertise on that. But salary and benefits cost, that's where that number resides today. Wages, we're still continuing to look at a new call staff wage model for FY23, including weekend incentive. So the difference between the weekday and the weekend is that you don't have myself or the deputy in the firehouse, or the captain in the firehouse, to help answer calls, and we've been helping alleviate that burden when we go with concurrent calls. The career staff increases of 9 firefighters, the total estimated cost per firefighter at the AEMT level, and the reason I had Shirley, that Shirley and I worked out that amount at that certification is that that's more likely what that person is going to hold when we as we operate emergency medical services. People that enter the department at the EMT basic level, the natural progression is to go on to the advanced EMT level, if not the paramedic level, so they can offer more procedures to our patient population. The CPI Northeast was estimated at the time we worked at this budget at 3.3. I believe that number is going to change, and that'll be amended as staff has the accurate number. But the majority of the change here, there was $117,000 in changes for the current staff between wages and benefits, and $791,000 with increase due to the new staff, and that's at 9 new staff. A little bit about the projected timeline for hiring. I haven't had a chance to actually speak to the town manager about this. We will meet on Thursday, but we met with other career fire departments throughout the state today on the challenges that they're having. So we're trying to work this out, and the timeline, the rough timeline that we have now, we have anticipated positions open, so the application process is open. That application would be held open through January 30th. And at that time, we would look at resumes and see what we had for qualified candidates, and then decide where we're going to interview those candidates and come up with a list of qualified candidates. There's still some other challenges that occur there. None of that, we would not have any conditional offers of employment until after the town meeting day budget vote. The cost that would potentially be incurred here in FY22, salary and benefits, would be around $150,000. And the training academy cost for the 8-week academy is just shy of $28,000 to run them through the academy. The ARPA funds, and so Jeff, I believe you had spoke earlier about dedicated or potential uses for ARPA funds. The manager has, we've had this discussion to cover this one-time expense of firefighter radios. Those are $6,200 each. Initial set of firefighting turnout gear is $4,500, and that includes the helmet, the boots. So helmet's just shy of $500. The boots are at $500 right now. The gloves are over $100. The hoods are over $100. What we wouldn't need to do to get them a backup set is we wouldn't have to buy a second helmet. We wouldn't have to buy a second set of boots. So we would take that $1,000 off to get them the turnout coat and pants. So $7,000, $8,000 there. And then the hiring costs for physical exam, background checks, et cetera. So $135,000 potentially of ARPA funds. Capital equipment, it's my desire, and you challenged the police department on this a little bit as well, as I'd love to look in. I've had the discussion with the deputy about replacing the command vehicle with the potential with electric vehicles. I just don't, neither of us know if the technology is going to be ready, and I think you've heard the same apprehension here at our law enforcement partners, is that we'd like to explore that and pay close attention to that. It's not the FY23 budget, but it's money that's going to that capital investment, and really is going to be dependent on technology. But we certainly have an eye on that. We've been watching vendor products and to come out there, and we're just waiting for that to be released, and at least some agency to take the lead and show us the reliability, the dependability of that before we, like you heard earlier with Lieutenant Moore saying that we end up with needing to charge the battery on the side of the road. Capital equipment budget for the fire department, an increase that we would look at would be to purchase a third 12 lead defibrillator. And so what that would allow us to do is that, it would allow us to have another 12 lead diagnostic monitor on a second fire apparatus. So right now, if the engine and the ambulance go out, we don't necessarily have another 12 lead diagnostic machine on another spare one in the firehouse. So this would allow us to do that. Each year we put around $8,000 away for our hydraulic rescue tools, and that's for vehicle extrication. And we feel that we can defer it this year with no expectation of making it up next year. Just the way that we were seeing the life of these tools, we anticipate that it should be fine, that we can defer that $8,000. Additionally, we've deferred $21,000 in the fire radio replacement. We received a $50,000 grant award from the Homeland Security Unit as part of a package that we put together in our rescue task force, where we're able to purchase 8 portable radios. So that helps us defer that radio replacement costs, in addition to potential ARPA funds for new hire portable radios. The other deferment we have done is in the fire equipment line, and so you may have understood, or maybe you didn't understand, that within our contract with the apparatus manufacturer for the aerial ladder, we had a delivery date penalty built into that contract, and for every day that they didn't meet that, they were penalized a financial amount. So what we've done is taken that penalty, and we've been able to order and purchase thermal imaging cameras, which would have been purchased under the capital equipment account. So that was allowing us to defer that amount as well. So we took the penalty. We suffered because we took a little bit of a delay in getting the apparatus delivered, but now the apparatus dealer is actually paying for the equipment for us. The ambulance replacement plan, the ambulance is slated to be replaced in FY23. We finalized the order. We signed the purchase order in late August. We finalized the order at the pre-build in October. And as you heard earlier, there's a national chassis shortage. And so the story, we spoke to the vendor today. We were told a 500+ day build time at the time of order. And today they don't believe we're going to get that truck before September. So that'll be almost a $700 day build time. So,
2 years.
yeah. So that will be part of debt that will go in front of the voters on the ballot as well.
Yeah, and I can just to that, Chief. Historically, the town's done lease purchases for these ambulances. Short-term finance debt has a number of advantages for interest rates and those items. So that'll be for the board to consider putting that on the warning.
We are using FY 2018 Fire Act grant. We have some unallocated funds, and Shirley is working with Lieutenant Baker, and we're able to secure an amendment to that grant. And it's our hope that we'll purchase the power load cot and system that goes into this ambulance out of those funds to help offset that cost and keep it down below the potential cost that it has. Capital buildings, for FY '23, we were able to defer the $18,000 in paving from FY '23, but we'll fully fund it in FY '24 at $36,000. The station, the asphalt at the station has been sealed, where all the cracks have been sealed, and now that sealant has come up and the cracks are showing their face again, and this is gonna be an item that we're actually going to need to take action on in FY '24. So that will need to, although it's going to be deferred, we'll have to absorb it in '24. We began a phone system upgrade in FY '22. That was done through some bit of grant, but we still have handsets that we didn't have the funding for. I'll continue to look at that, the potential for any year-end funds this year. It's about $7,500 that we still need to buy the remaining handsets. And there were handsets that we didn't prioritize, but it's the handsets that are on the far end of the apparatus bay away from the administrative section. All it makes for right now is our staff has to kind of rush back to the closest phone a little bit. So when we have the funds, if we have the fund here in '22, we'll try to take care of it then. But if not, we have it included in our capital '23. The fire annex modification, that was money that we had continued to set aside for the potential for renovation of space in the garage where the command vehicles are located. And not knowing what the future of the station's going to look like, it didn't make sense for us to continue to put like small dollars in there when we're really talking about big dollar issues. It wasn't realistic. So the recommendation is that we'll have a programmatic analysis of the station in its entirety to see, and we'll look at that potentially with a master plan and the needs of the community. But it didn't make sense for us to keep deferring that money when the project wasn't going to be realistic. The scope of the project was much larger than we first anticipated. That's the high level of it. I'm sure there's a number of questions here. Happy to try to tackle them as I can.
Thank you, Chief, for doing both operations and capital. That was very helpful. Questions on either parts of it?
It's a lot. The 9 firefighters, the concept is they'll be fully funded in fiscal year 2023.
Yes.
And that's because they're just absolutely needed all year.
Yes, sir.
If, for instance, just hypothetically, sorry, let me take this off. Hypothetically, if the decision were to fund half of them full-time, half of them half-time, meaning the second half of the year. It's an approach we've used for some positions in town. Instead of hiring them for the whole fiscal year, you hire them for the second half of the fiscal year. So that first year, you only spend, roughly half of the salary of their annual salary. That would not work in this case, in your mind.
Well, I would say that you couldn't divide it in half. You'd have to divide it in thirds.
Okay.
So it'd be 2/3 and 1/3.
Okay, fair enough. Yep, I get it.
And do you understand that that's based upon 3 shifts
Yep.
and the cycle, that half this doesn't work. It doesn't mathematically equate to a balance. And the 1/3 option doesn't do anything for operational benefit. So if you only hired 3, we wouldn't be able to it still only puts a person on the the first out engine. It doesn't help us with the concurrent call issue. And that's really where the 9 comes in. The 9 is about the potential to answer that 30% of the time that we're running concurrent incidents where we have to try to answer, divide and conquer across the community. And so when you would look at a single firefighter addition, they would be on the apparatus, so you could render aid to the call at hand, but any subsequent calls would still go to be a challenge for the community. So the practice of potentially abandoning a fire apparatus, maybe we don't abandon the fire apparatus, but it leaves a single firefighter. So you haven't really added any capability. You need to have that depth.
And the fire station, it's capable of handling the additional staff.
It is.
Okay. Okay. That's really it for me.
Other questions?
We recognize this is a challenge. We know this is a challenge, but we also want you to know where we're at operationally. And we're living that challenge. So I think if we look at it for the total impact, and I think the Observer had it documented here today at $150 a year on the median income home, total budget, not just fire budget, but if I had that ability, I think that's money well spent for $150. So I appreciate everyone's time.
Thank you. The house that burned last Friday belonged to a old acquaintance of mine, and thank you for doing what you could do out there, even though it couldn't save it, but thank you.
Yeah, it's an emotional situation for sure. So
Yeah.
I'm very proud of our staff. They worked their butts off.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
We'll move on then to general administration budget, and Eric and Shirley will handle the 4 or 5 different parts of it. So, Eric, I'll turn it over to you.
And we can, well, a lot of this could be considered the lightning round of the evening.
Yeah.
There's not a whole lot in
I feel like that award goes to Sarah. She.
I can start off, Shirley.
Okay.
I'm on the beginning of general admin. So get a high level. This covers manager's office with general overhead, select board, technology, manager's office itself. The major variance for the general overhead, I've increased legal by about $5,000 based on prior year's experience on the actuals there. I think a little bump up is warranted with that line. The building maintenance component of that is also going up about $3,500, and that's a formula we split for all departments in the building that Shirley comes up with that division and those numbers. Select board budget is going down a little bit, and I think that's tied to some of the contractual items in there, Shirley, with
Yes, I've just gotten it here. I should know that off the top of my head. Forget it. We have this in here with, let's see. There was the $1,800 that was removed. That was the tax, I'll call it rebate or tax discount for the Masonic Temple when it was owned by a nonprofit. So that was removed. That's probably the biggest item in there.
yeah.
There was, I'll just say this, for all of the budgets, again, as the auditors continue to look at more things and we chat about more things, in the manager's budget used to be like the longevity pay and the merit pay, and then we used to, for the budget, and then we used to, expense the merit pay to the departments and, auditors. And I'm glad, because it doesn't make any sense, put the budget where the expenditures are going to be. So the town manager's bonus was in the select board budget, and that now sits in the town manager's budget and not in the select board budget. Even though you control it, it's where the expense is actually going to lie. So that was moved out of the budget as well. So, and same thing across all of these budgets for longevity and merit. Those used to sit in the town manager's budget. They now sit in each of the individual department budgets where they should be expensed at the end of the day.
Okay, so can I get this correct?
Yep.
The manager controls the select board budget, and the select board controls the manager's salary.
You got it.
I authorize the expenses at the pleasure of the board. It's moving on to technology, essentially level funded, where that covers our IT costs, mainly service contracts and some new equipment for town staff and the administrative buildings here. It's essentially level. I decreased a little bit because we need to buy as many computers next year, so that's where that comes a little bit lower. In the manager's office itself, really the big decrease there is having now Erin Dickinson on board as our HR coordinator and assistant to the manager. We've split her the salary for that position between manager's office and finance office to account for the split in duties and where they fall within budgets. So that's where you see that largest variance there. And if there's not any questions on those pieces, I can toss it to Shirley for finance budget.
I don't see anything. No.
Okay. So I'm going to start with the Board of Listers. The changes there aren't very many, but the professional
page?
services.
Sorry, what page are we on?
So I'm under general admin. If you go past Eric's, if you go past the detailed pages of Eric's,
Okay,
the finance department is right after that.
Got it?
thank you.
And I'm just looking at the overall summary page, not the individual detailed pages.
Yep.
So professional services, that's Bill Hinman, our contracted assessor. His rate did go up about 5% this year. Office equipment, we're going to need a new computer for one of the assistant assessor. And then the tax maps was something we had moved to the reappraisal fund, but we're moving it back to the general fund because we've done an analysis of the reappraisal fund, and when the reappraisal will be done, and we just figure we'll have enough money to pay for the reappraisal. So this little bit is coming back into the general fund. So that is it for the big variances in the Board of the Listers budget. When we keep going, any questions?
Yep.
Okay. So the cash receipts and the management, we just got rid of that. We are finance now. So make it easy. And there's really no reason to separate it because Mary, who's our treasurer, works for finance too. And we're a department and we share tasks. So we just got rid of that additional function, let's say. So as Eric already mentioned, the reason the department staff is higher is because 50% of Erin's, or the HR coordinator, assistant to the town manager, 50% of her salary and benefits is in finance and HR. Let's see. My writing is so small, I can't even see it myself. The service or property and casualty insurance, it looks like it's new, but it's really the fact that that cost is being allocated between the clerk, the town manager, and finance and HR. So I take the overall calculation for that for the building, and then I just divide it amongst the three of us, and we all share it equally. Computer applications, we pay for Adobe software, so because we're moving to paperless slowly, but we're getting there. So in order to have the version of Adobe that we can write on it and make notes, we pay for that. And in this line item is $2,000 for some payroll software. So, that may not do it for us, but I've started just peeking at a couple different demonstrations. We'd like to get some payroll software that integrates with our NEMRC payroll software so that people can do their time entry in the cloud and have it interface with NEMRC. So right now it's still all on paper and it's just not, yeah. Thank you, Greta. Yeah. It's just not very efficient. So we need to move into the 21st century here. So hope to get through that process in FY23. Yeah. Thank you, Chief. I thought you'd be favorable to that one. Let's see. Thanks for staying, by the way. I thought everyone would be gone by now. Building maintenance, it really is looking at our history. And again, that cost is divided. It includes the building and grounds persons and public works that actually do the building cleaning and maintenance. So we divide their wages amongst all the departments that they serve. So I calculate that for this building, and then it's just split between the manager, the clerk, and the finance office. Those, and I guess for office equipment, the number there is that Mary needs a new computer next year, so that is in there. But those are the biggies. Training and conferences is 0, and now it's up. Really, that's just moving from the town manager's office to the finance because my expenses were sitting there previously. So not new dollars, just moved dollars. Any? Yep. Okay. So now I'm going to go to your tab that's services. So on this one, I think I'll be faster than Sarah because most of it is really not changing. I mean, the biggest change here is that last year we had the $34,000 for the CCPSA. And you heard Eric speak about it earlier. We're waiting to see if we're going to get ARPA funded. So there is nothing in this budget for any further funding to the CCPSA for now. A couple of these numbers we do not have final yet. GMT bus service, that's the next biggest change. And that really is based on the fact that their costs are more and that just flows through to us. So that was all I was going to mention because everything else is, well, I should actually say Lake Iroquois Association, they asked for $15,000 to help with continue the lake cleanup and education. So that is in this budget for $15,000 is an increase of $5,000 from the FY22 budget.
Shirley, could you mention while you're there, we moved the ERF and affordable.
Oh, yes,
housing within this
yes,
cost
good
center.
point. So we used to have, what do we call it, Eric? The preservation or something like that.
Land and housing preservation.
There we go. And I thought, well, why do we have a budget category with 2 things in it? So we just moved it in here to make it a little, a couple less pages, I guess. Saving paper, there's our effort. So those costs have not changed, or our proposal has not changed from last year.
Any questions on this? I guess not.
Okay, so the next section we are going to is called capital expenses. And I'm going to just talk about the debt piece of this because of the capital expenses, the funding from each of those sheets that Eric really went through all of the capital budget process and decided how to fund things, whether it was from operating budget. As you know, the thing that looks different there is there's no more host town fund. So in FY22, the host town fund previously was its own fund and really never should have been. Those funds are just general funds for the town. They weren't specific to anything, but they were used to fund our capital budget. So now that host town revenue is just part of the general fund revenue. And therefore, that revenue is just in the operating budget as capital projects or capital equipment being funded through there. But Eric really took the fine look at how to fund our operating budget between, you know, what's coming from operating taxes and other revenue sources, and ARPA, and some of it from fund balance to try to minimize the tax rate impact. So in regards to the debt services, in FY '23, that'll be the last principal and interest payment on our library roof debt, so that will be gone. The Muddy Brook is new on this sheet, but that's the new debt that we have from the culvert project. The fire engine 18 principal, the way that debt service was structured is that we paid interest for 6 years, and then for the last 7 years of that debt, we pay principal and interest. So that is new this year, but the debt's not new, just the principal part of that debt is new. And then everything else is kind of status quo, but I'm going to jump down to the very bottom, the fire station roof. Principal, says principal twice, sorry, I missed that. It should say principal and interest. That was in FY '22. So there is no ongoing debt for that because we didn't borrow. We had savings from the timing of the Muddy Brook funding that happened later than we thought. So we had $14,000 in savings in our FY '22 budget. Plus we had the savings because of the new fire trucks, also that debt being delayed. There was another $77,000 in the FY '22 budget. So that was $91,000 of savings in the FY '22 budget that we used to just pay for the fire roof directly, and the rest came out of fund balance or, you know, other favorable variance to budget by the end of the year. And that's it.
In the front of your capital budget is the full debt schedule as well. So you'll see when our, it's 3 or 4 pages in, but it'll show you the maturity of these bonds the town has outstanding, so.
And where's this?
Introduction tab, and it's, let's see.
How many pages is it?
We'll have to improve our page numbering because I got a book that didn't have page
Yep,
numbers.
I don't have a book with page numbers either.
It's about midway through capital.
If you find the tax impact summary, it's 2 pages after that. And it says debt schedule on the top.
Just wanted to flag for the board here, some of these 20-year bonds the town had when putting in our new public safety facilities. We can see that there is a light at the end of repaying that debt here coming up this decade. It was 3 series of bonds, so the first one has a maturity in FY '25, then the second in '26, the second in '27. So that's making up a significant portion of our annual debt service right now. And as we think about debt capacity and future capability to take on debt capacity, that window is potentially coming up for the town. The Public Works building, that's out a little bit further at 2023, but those are our largest annual debt payments we have right now.
And if you go to the page before that, I'm just going to follow up on some comment that Todd made. It's the schedule is called Town of Williston Unfinished Capital Projects. It's just a short schedule. We haven't talked about this one a lot in the past, but we've always had it. So these are different pots of money that have been previously committed to certain projects. So if you look at the column that says recreation impact fees, so 63,000 of that was committed, and the years are pre-2006, so we've been holding on to that one for a while, to sidewalks, paths, whatever. And then the 90,000 is the FY '22 and FY '23 funding for the sidewalk bond, so we can we can use the rec impact fees to help pay for the debt on the sidewalk bond. In FY '22 and '23, previously we had 15,000 a year. We increased that to 45,000 a year just to help minimize the tax rate increase. But there's the line that says current cash balance, $768,000, right at the bottom of that. So I'll go up, I'll go up one more. So it says total, $153,574. So those are dollars committed out of these rec impact fees. There's $768,000 in cash in the rec impact fees. So it looks like we have a surplus of $614,000. And then previously committed for the Allenbrook Community Park is the $120,000. It's the number you see down there as a negative. So to follow on what Todd said, he said there's actually more money in the rec impact fees than that schedule was showing, because this amount has not actually been committed. And Eric and I have had a conversation, and we'll bring something to you as we work through an analysis of the rec impact fees. But essentially, those dollars are there that can be committed to Allenbrook, to the build out of Allenbrook Park as well. So I just wanted to follow up on that comment that Todd had made.
Anything else under capital that we need to talk about tonight?
I've got a capital sheet. I'll wait till next week when the library trustees are here, just on a project to scope out community center library.
Right.
Hold that one for next time.
Any questions for Eric or Shirley on anything we just talked about? No. We can go on to manager's report.
Just have one item. We almost hit our time here tonight, but just a reminder, we set the start for next week at 6:30 as well, a little bit earlier. We've got some general business on the agenda, then round out budgets with Public Works, Library, a couple of items we missed tonight, and a discussion of revenue. And then you'll have heard all of the overview of the budget proposal at that point before the holidays.
Good. Is there any other business to talk about tonight? No. All right, we did well in 3 hours, so we are adjourned.